we might be much more haunted by boredom than most of us would think. In fact, that may be the very reason why you're watching this video right now. Perhaps immediately after this video, and after some incessant scrolling, you might start Netflixing even, the recent hit on TV, or perhaps going out with a friend, perhaps doing a hobby, perhaps playing video games. In fact, since we are on the subject, you might actually be bored of your life as well, on a macro scale, that you desire change. Maybe that's why you've been contemplating whether to quit your job, try a different career, try something new, to travel, to make new friends, to develop new hobbies, maybe, perhaps even, to meet a romantic partner. It seems to be that we are all trying to escape boredom, and we try with all of our means, do all sorts of things to keep ourselves occupied so that we don't feel bored. And this experience of boredom that I'm talking about seems to be universal. We all feel it. It's almost a universal condition of human life, which really does make you wonder about the philosophical underpinnings of boredom. And indeed, German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer believed that boredom is part of the human condition, an inescapable part. According to Schopenhauer, boredom is this substantive sense of worthlessness of experience, this bland feeling that we get that can be quite existential to experience. When you're bored, you just feel bland. It's like the moment is there, but you're sort of not really alive in a way. This grayscale feeling, if you will. Now, the reason why we feel this, according to Schopenhauer, is because of desire. We all desire pleasure, pleasure in the external sense. For all of us, there are things that we want in our lives that emanate from pleasure. For example, we may want a new job to feel a sense of achievement. We may want more friends to feel a sense of social satisfaction. Hobby, the sense of entertainment. Perhaps a romantic partner has a sense of connection. There are so many things that we want that really ties itself to the pleasures that we want to experience from life. And so we chase and we pursue these pleasures, which in the pursuit of it can actually be a struggle as well, which Schopenhauer recognized as pain. Yet the biggest irony is once we actually achieve and attain these pursuits, these things that we desperately want, that's when the clock starts. We're never truly satisfied. We start to feel, according to Schopenhauer, boredom, because we start to think about the next novel thing that we want. And these desires, they seem endless in a sense. Once you acquire them, there's something else that you want. And so according to Schopenhauer, life is really like a pendulum that swings back and forth between pain and boredom. The pain in terms of the struggle of pursuing pleasure and the boredom of attaining it. And I think most of us find ourselves basically on this almost purgatorial cycle of trying to avoid boredom by chasing pleasure, yet when we attain pleasure, we start to feel bored again. We convince ourselves that perhaps the end is in sight once we get a certain thing or do a certain thing or have a certain thing in our lives, then boredom will be cured, but it never is. And you look at life in all of its manifestations, whether it is the creative rock star who wants to make his greatest hit and succeeds in doing so, he never stops, or the billionaire business person who wants to create a legacy but he never stops, or the intellectual writer who wants to really share his views with the world but he also never stops. Schopenhauer seems to be on point in recognizing the two poles of human condition, this pendulum. And it does make you think, is boredom a natural condition of human existence? In other words, is our default state a sense of worthlessness? Well, these are deeper philosophical questions that will of course be tackled by many different philosophers. But as far as Schopenhauer is concerned, as pessimistic as that sounds, being on this pendulum of life, he does offer some solutions to escape this pendulum. First of all, Schopenhauer recognized that there is almost a link, a relationship between intelligence and boredom. It tends to be that the more intelligent we are, the more bored we can be. The greater the propensity for boredom, the sense of worthlessness. Consider this, animals don't get bored, at least in the human sense. They don't have that sort of complex level of intelligence that we do. But recognizing that relationship is very interesting too, at least in the human context. The more intelligent a person seems to be, there is a greater propensity to be bored. Because of course we also know of the ignorant fool that is incredibly happy. The more foolish a person is, the more naive they are, the happier they tend to be in life compared to someone who's thinking a lot. Now this may come down to the way that we ascribe values in life. For example, us being much more complex, all of us in our thinking, we may have created very complicated value systems in life. We tell ourselves that we need these desires, these things, be they material things or other abstract things. For example, popularity, recognition, social entertainment. We through our own complexity, have created these desires that we are probably be happier without. So one of the ways to really escape this pendulum is to revisit the desires that we've set up for ourselves. One thought that I've been having recently is the definition of insanity. The idea that when you do certain things repetitively over and over again, the same things, yet expecting different results, never questioning whether what you're doing is even worth it at the outset. And it's the same thing with our value systems, these desires that we have. We never really question whether they should be there in the first place. The second thing that is quite interesting that Schopenhauer brings up is that in moments when we actually appreciate the beauty of life, whether it be, for example, an appreciation of art, music, they all revolve around being in the moment and actually appreciating life on its own. And that is an alternative perspective where we welcome life in its entirety rather than view it from the lens of chasing things, of pursuing things. This conscious mindfulness towards actually living. Now, not exactly spoken by Schopenhauer, but I think the way we can derive an understanding from this, which is quite personal in most of our contexts, is that a lot of us, we tend to have a fear of actually spending time without any distractions at all. We want to be constantly distracted because we can't face the solitude of each moment and embrace the conscious experience of each moment. Boredom, to me, is really us trying to escape reality as it is. It's when we're impatient and rather dismissive of what life has to offer moment to moment. Schopenhauer spends a great deal in his writing talking about the finer appreciation of things like music and art, things that can help us become more conscious towards the human experience. And I think that sort of approach we should definitely embrace in terms of life itself. The cure to boredom in life is not necessarily to distract yourself. The cure to boredom ultimately comes from actually facing life without any distractions and learning to enjoy the beauty of it. Now finally, Schopenhauer argued that certain kinds of people might be able to escape the pendulum. For him, these are people like saints, mystics, people that may be able to look through the veil entirely. And I think to me, he is referring to people who are on the endeavor of actually philosophizing about life, of questioning this entire paradigm that we find ourselves trapped in and haunted by. And although I might not have figured it out at the moment yet, and maybe not you, the cure to boredom might just be thinking about it a lot, rather than just be instinctive and accept things as they are. Perhaps it comes more from intellectual introspection, and perhaps that's the way that we can actually find an escape from the curse of boredom.